international and national speakers and political leaders. Hosted by Family First New Zealand, the forum brings together a national network of family-focused organisations, scholars, lobby groups, church leaders and community groups who are part of a growing movement to bring New Zealand to a point where families are strengthened, marriage is honoured, life is protected and religious freedom is defended. This year's conference will again be held at the Dewdrop Event Centre in Manukau City, not too far from the Auckland Airport, on Thursday 28th of August and Friday 29th of August. Yes, because of demand, we're starting the conference earlier with 3 important sessions and a time of networking on the Thursday evening, and then a full-day program all day Friday. This year's theme is Courage at a Cultural Tipping Point. The culture is slowly but surely waking up to the harmful effects of the radical left-wing agenda and the destruction of family values that we all hold dear. Some countries have even figured out how to define a woman. And at this year's conference, once again, we have an amazing lineup of brave speakers from the US, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Dr. Miriam Grossman last spoke at our forum in 2012. You may also recognise her from the recent Daily Wire documentary, What is a Woman? But more recently, she's released an important book on the transgender agenda. I'll be doing a live interview with Dr. Grossman from New York, where she is based. Jeff Johnson is an issues analyst for Focus on the Family in the United States. We're also very excited to have Dawn Hawkins discussing the issue of pornography and sexual exploitation. From Canada, we have Amanda Ackman bringing us a warning about the slippery slope of euthanasia. From Australia, we have Kiri Smith, a wife, a mother, and an activist for biology and truth, but who is paying the price for speaking up. And for the first time in New Zealand, you will get to hear their side of the story. Israel and Maria Folau. We'll get to hear from them personally and not via the hostile mainstream media. And finally, we're hosting and recording a special episode of Straight Talk before a live audience at the conference. It'll be a lively discussion and you can be part of that live audience. I want to invite you to this year's Forum on the Family. It starts Thursday night, 28th, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and then all day Friday, 29th from 8:45 a.m. through to 4:30 p.m. It's the highlight of the year and you don't want to miss it. Arrange to be there. Book your flights today. Gather your friends. If you're concerned for our culture, our country and our families, you may be saying, what can I do? Well, step 1, attend the Forum on the Family. Have your spine stiffened by some fabulous speakers who will encourage, equip and inspire you. Now, the last couple of years have been sellouts, so don't delay. Go to our website, forumonthefamily.nz, for all the information you need. Register today. Don't miss this important family conference. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. Register today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning from a day here in Auckland where it's not raining. It is quite a novelty, but I'm sure for those of you in other parts of the country which have been hit much, much harder, or you're a or you're a farmer, this has been a much more dramatic than your gutters overflowing. But no, it's nice to have a relatively, I can see a comment coming from Rosie, I'll put it on the screen in a moment, that it's very chilly in Wellington. It's not too bad here this morning. My watch, actually, because I haven't stepped outside, actually tells me it's 14 degrees. But no, it's a lovely day, and welcome to you all to Solid Ground. It's lovely to have you all here. This streams across an array of platforms, including now my LinkedIn, I hope. But if you want to comment on the show, because this is live, Solid Ground is a live show. If you'd like to comment, if you jump onto the Family First YouTube channel or the Family First Facebook page, your comments come directly to me here in studio. And so like Adrian there in Switzerland, hello, and Jackie in Reitahi, I'm able to say good morning, which is always lovely. Got Darren there, lovely to have you back. And as I say, Rosie telling me it was quite chilly down there. So if you have any comments or thoughts as the show goes on, do let me know, is the long and the short. If you've got thoughts on what I'm sharing on, and I'm going to touch on some of New Zealand today and a little bit of overseas, the UK and the US. If I get, not the US, actually, I'll keep the US probably out of it. The UK and Australia, there's a few things happening there you may or may not be aware of, but I want to start with some things in New Zealand. But if you've got comments or questions about other things which are happening, it doesn't have to be things that are on the show. I'm more than able to quickly respond to people's questions. Not all and everything at times. As I say, I'm trying to manage the show and the comments. But as I say, if you've got anything you'd like to discuss, just put it in the chat. And more than happy to engage. A reminder, though, that tonight at 5 o'clock, so that's tonight, Thursday, 5 o'clock, Bob and I are hosting Political Playback. It's where we talk New Zealand politics. What's been happening in New Zealand, in the world of politics, for the last week. So don't forget that, because, well, it's always quite important. And good morning to Anna Marie. Lovely to have you along as well. I see the comments there. Join us at 5. Obviously, Solid Ground moves across an array of areas which catch my attention. One was this, and I'm always slightly hesitant when it's discussing a former colleague. Now, granted, she was in Labour and I'm in National, but we were in Parliament at the same time. And there's always a small part of me that doesn't, believe it or not, doesn't like talking about former colleagues, particularly when things have gone badly. And so, but I am on this case because there's at least 2 points that we need to draw out. And I think actually media, to a degree, are asking these questions. And actually kudos that they've continued to pursue this, because long and short, you might recall that Kiri Allan was the Minister of Justice. And from what we can see now, with even more information having been sought by the OIA, so this wasn't on public record, what the journalist has found out. They had to get it out of the police, and it was got from the police because it was seen as a matter of public interest. So in other words, it was you or I, this wouldn't be released by and large. It was the police officers' notes who arrested her. So she was drunk as a skunk, to put it quite simply, and crashed her car in Wellington, as we suspected at the time because of the little hints of her behaviour. And what's now come out, it was pretty atrocious. The yelling and screaming at the police, telling them that she was the one who makes the laws, grabbing hold on to shrubs to try and stop being effectively arrested. I say effectively arrested because I think at that point they were trying to get her to an evidential breath test, but she was doing all she could to stop that. Didn't want to have a bar of it. Enough compos mentis, if you will, to know that she was completely drunk, as I say, and crashed a car. Having to go at the police officers, not physically, but verbally, trying to just sort of sit down and having to be dragged, or rather the invitation to be dragged, and then, as I say, holding on to shrub bushes. So all pretty bad, to be honest, in and of itself. And so that's one of the reflections. This is pretty poor behaviour. The second, though, is, and it's post factum now. In other words, it's in the past. We can't change it. But I was in the Parliament as this was happening, and you can't help but feel that Chris Hipkins and her colleagues were doing all they could to downplay and minimise this. That was very much my memory of it. It may be yours. I mean, there's always going to be a degree if you're in politics or anywhere. I mean, even if it was a family member, you would, I think rationally, reasonably as a human, try to play things down. But if you look at what the Labour Party, what Chris Hipkins was saying at the time, to what we now know, this was a very drunk, very entitled government minister. So pretty appalling, really. Not again as a surprise, not because I knew by any means, but I think most of us intuitively sensed it was more to it than simply, oh, I was drunk and I crashed a car. We've all been around people who've had far too much to drink and they act in a very particular way. I suppose the third point, which I hadn't actually thought of, is of course she's played, as we've seen with other MPs, the race and the gender card. And I've talked about this before with other MPs' behaviours, but at the time, and a hint of it recently when she gave her first public, quite choreographed interview, was to make this out, this is Kiri Allan that is, that this was all about being a Māori woman. No, is the short answer. It has nothing to do with those qualities. That's just classic identity politics. It all had to do with her being completely drunk and abusing police officers, crashing her car and crashing into someone else's car. I don't know about you guys, but I am sick and tired of all the excuses based around identity politics. As I say, it very rarely has anything to do with the colour of your skin, your ethnicity, your biological sex, or anything. It all comes down to your personal responsibility. But there is one caveat on this, and it's not an excuse for what she's doing, and only Kiri Allan will know, but I suspect the role she was in was far too stressful. And I've seen this with colleagues in general, both in the private, public and political sector, that when people get stressed, not all and everyone will do this, but they turn to things like drink as not helpful. It's a response to that stress. So those could be reasons which led to it. But her drinking and her crashing the car, her abusing police, has absolutely nothing to do with being a Māori woman. Now I think, Edmund, I see good morning to you here. Dennis, and to Dennis, where's my button? Good morning to you. I actually have a note which I wrote to myself this morning because I have received your emails. Dennis has a wonderful podcast called Leadership is Changing. If you're interested in leadership, if you're into, leadership in any form, jump onto his podcast, look him up. Leadership is Changing. He also has a regular newsletter, which up till now I was struggling, wasn't I, Dennis, to get hold of, but I have it now. Which I just wanted to let you know. I was going to email you, but I don't need to now. Now I saw something here. Yes, it was from Rosie. Apologies, there's so many comments flying in. She shouldn't have been behind the wheel. And this is the other quirky thing about it all. As a minister, you can take ministerial cars, you can get a taxi anytime, anywhere. If you're ordinary citizens like us, you'll often be thinking about how much it's going to cost, even for an Uber. But no, she didn't. She chose to get behind the wheel. And Dennis nails it too. It's a complete lack of accountability. And that probably sums it up far more distinctly than I was saying. That she didn't take accountability. I'd argue she still hasn't. And nor did her colleagues in the government at the time. They did all they could to downplay it, which I think was just disappointing. And then this came out yesterday. I honestly don't know. And look, I worked with Golriz on the Foreign Affairs Committee and actually had a bit of respect for some of the things that she pursued. She was actually really good at the time pushing against the Iranian ambassador who came into our committee. This was during the Mahsa Amini protests, or you might know them as Woman, Life, Freedom. She was quite good. Granted, when the ambassador came to the select committee, by the way, he doesn't have to. Ambassadors can't be called to a New Zealand committee, but he chose to. She did turn it into a bit of a theatre about herself. But, we obviously had her shoplifting, and then more recently, my mind's just, oh, that's right. She's, long and short, continue the dramas. And then recently she's come out defending the Iranian regime, which I just find is absolutely crazy. As I say, she's made a political career out of attacking Iran, being a refugee from the mad mullahs, and now she's writing into the papers and saying actually it's a good regime. As I noted yesterday, as soon as you introduce Israel or Jews into an equation, most people seem to lose their moral clarity like Golriz has. And then this, basically, again, drunk. it would seem, if you believe the hospitality owner there on K Road. And I tend to, because I don't really know of any hospitality or restaurant owner that kicks their people out if they're there enjoying themselves and paying. And people, running off to media for situations like that make me very, very suspicious. So long and short, she was at a restaurant with friends. It sounded like a long brunch, I think they called it. She suggested that the deal wasn't honoured. The restaurant owners come back and said, look, actually, I don't want to say too much, but they were drunk, acting poorly, and so they closed down the lunch. And again, I sort of think if there's alcohol involved, I tend to lean towards the people not drinking. And also, Golriz has moved straight into and this is why it links to the Kiri Allan situation, it links directly to the line of excuses which all fit within identity politics. She's accusing this restaurant owner, and by the way, the restaurant is on K Road or in the area, that it's not friendly to Pacifica, Māori, queer, and so forth. And you're going, I don't think restaurant owners really care. All they care about is you turn up, have a nice bite to eat, and pay your bill. And I think, and Peter's I think it's quite true. That's probably another very good point that Peter raises, actually. That ultimately, getting drunk on K Road is fairly normal. I know this not because I've been drunk on K Road, but I used to live just off it, actually. So believe it or not, where the seminary, so where you train as a priest, is just off K Road and just off Ponsonby Road, actually. So I always found it quite funny in those years, during my 20s primarily, that no matter which way you were going, be it Ponsonby Road or K Road, you were walking into trouble. I just thought I'd raise those two. They're disappointing. As I said at the start, I never like at one level discussing colleagues' behaviour, and I should have added at the start if I didn't. No political party has a perfect record on this, certainly not the National Party. But these two examples, probably what links them is an entitlement, as Dennis said earlier, a lack of accountability, and finally this constant attempt to move to identity politics to defend really what is the indefensible. So yes, there's that. I thought I'd just jump to the UK now. And this is quite a big gear switch, and as we do so, I'll let you read this. This is about the 7/7 attacks. It was 20 years ago in the UK. I'll explain in a moment, but I'm going to have my monogrammed cup of coffee because I can feel I'm losing my voice. I'm seeing a debate on US economics as well, and I'm afraid there's so much stuff coming through on the comments I can't keep with it at the moment. I'll see if I can. And Rosie's asking, what is it with MPs and getting drunk? Sadly, I think a lot, it's the stress. I think it's the stress. Not in all and every instance, and then of course something like alcohol becomes quite addictive. I think the other thing I might just quickly add to that, and it's a more general thing, I'm stepping back from the UK now, and I'm not just talking about Golriz or Kiri Allan here, but I think if people go into politics with addictive problems, so if they already have a drug problem or a drinking problem, or they're prone to having affairs or whatever, and by the way, there's very few of those, very few, but becoming an MP doesn't make that magically go away. And I saw that in my corporate life, and I certainly saw it in my clerical or when I trained as a priest. If you come in with someone with a drinking problem and are then ordained a priest, you're going to be a priest with a drinking problem, just as an MP and so on. In other words, taking on certain roles in society doesn't magic away the problems that people have. In fact, the more stressful the roles become, I think, unfortunately, the worse things it exacerbates. That's the word I'm grasping for. This is more about transparency and openness, this topic in our society. I'm not here to make long comment on what happened in the UK. So 20 years ago, Islamic terrorists, I've forgotten 50 or so people, I think 52 people were killed when they detonated bombs in trains and in buses in London. So as I say, I can be corrected on that. I think it was 52. But it was Islamic terrorists who did so. And why I wanted to share this, because it does somewhat impact here in New Zealand as well, as we're seeing in the UK. So Keir Starmer, so he's the Prime Minister, wrote this. It's a lovely note overall, remembering the victims, but he just, and I've circled it there, nowhere in his message does he actually mention who's involved. Okay, it was Muslim terrorists. And we need to say this Because if you don't identify the who or the what, then you can't actually address it. It's the same with Sadiq Khan. I'm not going to put up his message. So he's the mayor of London. Again, not one mention of who the terrorists were. And why that's important, as I say, firstly, if you don't identify clearly and accurately who it is, you can't address the problem. Secondly, we know in the United Kingdom, and actually I do have a little thing for this. This is slightly different, but when I say it's slightly different, it's still related. Their terrorist entity, God, I'm losing my English this morning on my thoughts, are very happy to talk about what they call cultural nationalism, white supremacy. It's always very popular to whip that out. Don't get me wrong, there are problems with cultural nationalism. There are issues with white supremacy. But let's be also clear, nowhere near the same issue is Islamic terrorism. Okay, Islam has a problem with terrorism, and the rest of the world now consequently has one. But what you see in the UK, and you have it here in New Zealand too, is politicians and media who will be very, very quick to identify certain groups in society. You'll remember, was it... my mind's gone blank again, which is probably not a great example, is it? But he's having one of those mornings. But just go and scour the paper. The media will be very, very quick to identify attackers. If, in this case, they're European, or in the UK, you can think about those riots, the anti-migrant or immigrant riots a few months ago, which were terrible, by the way. But the mainstream media, the politicians, were very, very quick to call them out and identify who they were. It's the same when there's been actually, again, the attacks in France, Sweden, Germany. If they are German, if they are someone who's British originally, very, very quick to identify them. But as we're seeing with the 7/7 situation, there's just no ability to say who it is. And New Zealand has a bit of a problem with this as well. We just are not prepared to front who's actually involved with this, often and by and large. I mean, I read somewhere yesterday there's over 43,000 Islamic radicals who are on the UK watch list. 43,000. By and large, all imported. Major problem. Now look, here in New Zealand, we don't have to be deeply involved with the politics of the United Kingdom, but it is a warning, because we are having some of the same, not to the same degree, but we're having some of the same dynamics here. In particular, we don't have confidence in our culture. We don't seem to have an ability to call out the poor behaviours in other cultures in our society. We seem to give free rein to some of the groups who have recently migrated here to have a strong voice and opinion onto all and everything, while not allowing a lot of us to have our counter views. And I'm thinking around hate speech, for example. You'll often get the Federation of Islamic Groups or whatever, I forgot, I can see his face is rolled out more often than not to ask effectively for blasphemy laws in New Zealand and to ask that we need hate speech laws. We very rarely get the counter examples. And you look, I want a society that's based on actually Western Judeo-Christian values. Thank you very much. I don't want to see blasphemy laws return to this country. I don't want hate speech laws. I actually am quite liberal in this regard. I want people to be able to discuss, critique and challenge religions. And I don't care if it's Christian, Buddhist, Islam. They should all be able to be critiqued and challenged. That's the country we live in. And I don't want to see the mindsets imported from overseas, and then ending up in situations like Sir Keir Starmer, a Prime Minister who cannot even bring himself to say who was involved with 7/7. It's this lack of moral clarity which is impacting the West at the moment, and in very strange and problematic ways. The West just no longer seems to have the confidence in itself or the courage to speak out, and Sir Keir is just one of those examples. I find him as weak as water. Weak as water. Better be fair, I've never met the man, but just, weak. Speaking of weak, this is coming out of Australia. It's a couple of weeks old now. I've actually got Moira Deeming spoke up for women's rights. You might remember down in the state of Victoria. So she's what they call a Liberal Member of Parliament. So actually it's on the right wing, just to confuse things here in New Zealand. But Moira was part of those Speak Up for Women campaigns. And long and short, her party leader there on the right, I hope it's on your right, but obviously the guy who's a guy, John Pesutto, was the leader of the Liberals, kicked her out of the Liberal Party, accused her of all sorts of terrible names because she dared to believe in biological sex. Anyway, Moira is not to be someone pushed around. She fought back, as you might know, and won. She won her case, which I think was tremendous, and she won costs, to be fair. It wasn't an award, as I understand it, was costs of $1.5 million. Well, John Pesutto, like a lot of bullies in society, didn't have the money. And so, there was a lot of garment rending that this was going to cause major problems for the Liberals moving forward, because this leader, again, who can't even understand what a woman is, dragged Moira through the courts, but didn't, like, as I say, a lot of bullies do, doesn't have substance, in this case, any money. But why I thought I'd share this is what's, I think, incredibly sad, and not just about Moira, but it's about the wider dynamics of this gender ideology, is the Liberal Party in Victoria, the state of Victoria, are bailing Pesutto out. They're giving him a loan of $1.5 million. Now, as a former politician, I find that unheard of, that a political party would lend you money. Secondly, I don't think Pesutto is of that greater quality that he needs to be protected. But what is far more concerning is the depths and lengths people will go, in this case, to try and protect gender ideology. He's clearly wrong. He was clearly wrong to abuse Moira. He was clearly wrong to kick her out of the political party. He was wrong to pursue the legal avenues he did. The only thing that was right is that he lost. But the powers that be just cannot let go. So anyway, I just thought that's a little tidbit coming from overseas that I would share. As I say, I'm hoping actually to get Moira onto the podcast at some point, but I know what political life is like, so juggling diaries is difficult. And good morning. I see David saying good morning there. Lovely. I can see some of the good mornings coming through, guys. I see a whole lot of... actually, I might wrap up the topics there and see if there's anything... Adrian's saying Starmer's sold out England. Well, I think unfortunately they have. If you can't... It doesn't matter what the topics are. That's the other thing, guys. I can focus on 7-7 because it was very relevant. It's very timely. But there seems an inability of politicians in the UK and Europe, and arguably even here in New Zealand, just to call things for what they are. And it's very, very disappointing, to put it really, really simply. Simply Green says that Keir is one of those dividers. Well, he is. And again, it's that what do they call him? Two-tier Keir, which I think is actually quite funny. It's quite clever as much as funny, because there is this treatment that is different. I think a guy called Gad Saad, he's a philosopher, or maybe he's an anthropologist, but he's written something called Suicidal Empathy. And he talks about how basically, particularly in the West, we seem to challenge ourselves to a different standard to everybody else. And so only... that's the simple way to think of it, actually. I won't go into it in great depth. You can read his book. It's quite insightful. It's called Suicidal Empathy. So the West's empathy for other people, other groups, what's happening overseas, is not reflected onto itself. And so it ends up basically being, he would say, a parasitical type relationship. We just don't stand up for ourselves. And I think we all need to stand up for ourselves. Doesn't matter where we come from, who we are. But if we all stand up for our values and our beliefs, that actually leads to good, proper dialogue, discussion and a way forward. But what I observe, and I certainly saw it in politics, and I'm observing it now, is some groups just remain silent, unwilling to talk. Others become more and more dominant. And then all you seem to find is the pendulum begins to swing even more aggressively. In other words, the activists become even more aggressive, even more assertive. And those that do have an opinion to share go quieter and quieter. And it's not a good dynamic. Not a good dynamic, you know what? But then again, I could be here for hours going into it. As I say, a couple of last little reminders before I sign out, just before 8. Political playback at 5 o'clock tonight. It'll be lovely to have you along there, as I say, live with Bob and I. As with the start, a reminder that we have Forum on the Family coming up on August the 28th and 9th. It's not far away now, so get your tickets. They're selling really fast. A reminder that Family First is not just this show. There's lots of shows that you can watch. There's lots you can read. And obviously you can listen. You may or may not know that you can go onto our website or, of course, Spotify and listen to our podcast. In many ways, it's just the voiceovers of these shows. But if you want to listen to Solid Ground while you're driving or the latest Family Matters, you can. Remember, of course, that we do these shows every morning. We alternate between Bob and me. Or is that Bob and I? There's the controversy for the morning. I'll leave the grammarians to deal with that. Bob or me, or Bob or I? Anyway, this is every morning at 7:30. And this podcast has just dropped yesterday. Her name is Catherine Pakolik. It's actually a Ukrainian name, long and short. She's a Harvard-trained academic, a doctorate from Harvard in economics. She's an associate professor of economics and social philosophy. And she wrote a book called Hannah's Children. And it's all about the joys of having large families. And as an economist and as a social philosopher, she points out that actually there's huge benefits, not only to the children, the family, but society, of having a large family. I found it an absolutely amazing podcast. So jump on to YouTube, jump onto the Family First page. As I say, you can watch, read and listen. I even put the transcript in for you. Final reminders, Bob does his Substack, substack.com. He's writing away prolifically, and literally about an hour ago I dropped this one. This is my Substack, where I let you know that my grandfather was in the IRA. I'll just leave you that little teaser. My grandfather was in the IRA, and for the first time recently I went and visited Ireland. So this is my little, I don't know, is it a tribute to my grandfather? But also it's a chance just to share some reflections on that. And Anna Marie, who's instantly become my favourite person this morning because she's already listened to the podcast. You are amazing, Anna Marie. Hey guys, I better leave it there. I am conscious we all have a busy day to get to. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed, happy, joyous and dry day. I just hope it is stopping raining. I don't know about you guys. I am over all this rain. I'm pleased that the dams are full, but I know from my farming friends it's now too much. It's too much. Guys, have a wonderful day. I will see some of you tonight, 5 p.m. on Political Playback. Otherwise, I'll see you here next Tuesday.